I want to be honest about what I thought the first time I saw her walk into the mess hall at Fob Kessler. I thought she was lost. She came in wearing a flight suit that was 2 sizes too worn in to be new, a patch on the left shoulder she hadn't bothered to line up straight, and she moved like she had somewhere else to be. Not arrogant, just unbothered. The way people are unbothered when they've already proven everything they need to prove and forgotten about it. The rest of us were Army, Marine, SEAL, a mix that didn't always blend smooth at a shared forward operating base. She was Air Force, and she was the only woman in a room of about 40 men who were deep into a conversation she hadn't been invited to. Sergeant Hale noticed her first. Hale was the kind of man who had a comment for everything, good-natured on his best days, a load-bearing wall of ego on his worst. He was holding court at the long table near the coffee station, talking about the air support situation, how thin it had gotten, how they were flying with reduced assets. And some of those assets were, in his view, questionable. When she pulled a chair out at the far end of his table and set down her tray, he looked at her the way a man looks at something that doesn't fit his mental picture of a room. "You're in the wrong place, ma'am," he said. He didn't say it mean. He said it the way you'd say it to a tourist who'd wandered off the path. "Pilot quarters are the other block." She looked up from her food. "I know." He waited for her to move. She didn't. There was a moment, and then Hale said it louder. Not loud enough to be a scene, but loud enough for the 6 men on either side of him to hear clearly. "She has no business being here." He meant the base. He meant the flight line. He might have meant a lot of things. He was looking at her age, which read young, and her size, which read small, and whatever else he was reading in his head, and he made a judgment that a lot of men made the first time they saw her. She did not look up from her tray. I was sitting 2 tables back, and I saw the whole thing. I was 2 weeks into an attachment at Kessler, and I had not yet flown with her or spoken to her. I had heard the name on the Flightline manifest, the call sign Dustdevil, which meant nothing to me, and I had seen the A-10 on the south end of the tarmac with that call sign stenciled small under the cockpit rail. A-10s are not pretty aircraft. They're the ones that look like someone bolted a cannon to a piece of pipe and added wings as an afterthought. They go where nothing else will go. The pilots who fly them are a particular breed. I did not know sitting in that mess hall that I was looking at the most decorated A-10 pilot in the theater. Nobody at Kessler did. That was partly her doing. The next morning, it started. We had a patrol, 3 vehicles, 2 squads pushing through the valley road toward a forward observation point. Standard route. We had done it a dozen times. What we had not had a dozen times was the particular combination of a narrow canyon approach, a blocked egress from a rockfall the previous night, and 2 technical vehicles that materialized on the ridge above us with enough firepower to make the situation very bad very fast. The patrol leader called it in. He called it in calm. He called it in with the right grids. And the response from command was not what he wanted to hear. The available air asset was 12 minutes out. In that valley, 12 minutes was a long time. The technicals had the high ground. They had the angles. We had a rockfall behind us and a canyon wall on 2 sides and 40 men, trying to use every scrap of cover that existed, which was not much. I remember hearing the patrol leader key his radio and say, in a voice that was quieter than I expected, "Any air? Any air? This is Kessler Actual. We are taking fire in the valley. We need a gun run. Grid follows." What came back was a voice I recognized. It was the same voice that had said "I know" in the mess hall and not moved from her seat. "Kessler Actual, this is Dustdevil. I have your grid. I am 2 minutes out. Mark your position with smoke and keep your heads down." 2 minutes. I'd been in enough situations to know what an A-10 sounds like when it is inbound. There is nothing like it in the inventory. The sound builds before you see the aircraft. A low vibration that you feel in your chest before your ears process it. And then the aircraft appears at ridge level, lower than you think anything that size should be able to fly. And it goes through the canyon like it owns the air. The gun does not sound like a gun. It sounds like a tearing of something heavy, a stuttering, mechanical tear that lasts about a second and a half. And then the ridge line above us was different. Not destroyed, not in flames, just different and quiet. She made 4 passes in 11 minutes. The first pass put the lead technical out of the fight before it could reposition. The second pass walked a line across the ridge that cleared the elevated position and forced the second vehicle to break south. The third and fourth passes were surgical. She was working specific coordinates that our forward observer was painting in real time, and she was hitting them at angles that should not have been possible in that canyon without putting her aircraft into the walls. She was reading the terrain faster than I could track it, threading passes between ridge lines with maybe 100 feet of clearance, steady enough that the gun runs were precise rather than just close. When she broke off, she did one slow orbit above us. Not a combat orbit, just a long, low circle, and her voice came back on the radio. Kessler Actual, Dustdevil. Threats on your grid are neutralized. 9 vehicles and equipment destroyed. Count 9 hostile KA confirmed by gun camera. You have a clear route south. Good hunting. 9. In 4 passes. In 11 minutes. In a canyon that barely had room for the aircraft. The patrol leader did not say anything for a moment. Then he said, "Copy, Dustdevil. We owe you a meal." She said, "I know where the mess hall is," and was gone. I was back at Kessler by early afternoon. There were 340 men and women on that base, Marines, Army, a SEAL element, support staff, and word of what had happened in the valley moved through the base the way those things do, fast and then faster, until by the time the flight line crews were finishing their post-flight inspection on her aircraft, there was no one at FOB Kessler who did not know what Dustdevil had done that morning. I was on the tarmac when she climbed down. She dropped from the ladder to the ground with her helmet under one arm, and she stood there running a hand through her hair that was damp with sweat, squinting at the flight line crew chief who was giving her the damage assessment. No drama, no theater. She was already into the after action, asking questions about engine temperatures and gun round expenditure, doing the same thing she'd have done after any other sortie. Then she turned around and saw the line. It was not a formal formation. Nobody had called it. It had just happened, maybe 30, 40 men standing between the flight line fence and the far end of the tarmac, and behind them more, and behind them the rest of the base that had found some reason to be outside. 340 people on a forward operating base, standing still, looking at one pilot. Sergeant Hale was in the front of that line. I saw his face. He was not a man who showed things easily. He was the kind of man who kept his jaw set and his expression controlled at all costs. But standing there on the tarmac in front of that aircraft and that pilot, with what he knew she had done and what he knew he had said the morning before, he did not look controlled. He looked like a man recalculating everything. He brought his hand up, slow and straight and certain. She did not salute back. That was not what she did. She looked at him, just looked at him, level, not hard, not soft, the same unbothered expression she had worn in the mess hall, and then she gave him one nod. Small, final. Then she walked past the line, past all 340 of them, toward the debrief tent, and nobody said a word until she was inside. That is the only time in 11 years of service I have stood on a flight line in complete silence. Not the quiet of men being respectful, the quiet of men understanding, all at once, that they had been in the presence of something they had not recognized, and that the gap between what they had assumed and what was true was so large that words would not fit inside it. Hale never said her call sign again without stopping whatever he was doing first. Neither did I.